Floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Erich. And I have one more story to tell about Dimi, because you're actually part of an experiment we're doing. Because of course, yeah, doing duo talks, we haven't done this before. But Dimi is part of one of the success stories of Odyssey. I'm too close to the. Yeah, okay. Because the story of one of the teams that works with Willy Smits, the rainforest engineer, and it's also how this session came up. We usually go and brainstorm about what cool stuff we see and what cool stuff Dimi sees, and then when we bring things together, yeah, sometimes epic stuff happens. So let's see if that can be done today. But actually, when we were watching Willy Smits' TED Talk, I think it was in the summer of 2018, we were like, whoa, this guy is doing Nature 2.0, but then in reality, right? So that was like the idea to bring him into the Odyssey hackathon, and then one of the most successful projects that ever saw the light through the hackathon was born through that. So that's pretty cool. So let's see what we can do here when we bring different kind of worlds together. When we say culture eats tech for breakfast, and when we talk about ecosystem development, we are thinking about what gives an ecosystem life. How does it get a pulse, right? There is this interesting story that in a human embryo, the blood starts pulsating before the heart grows. So think about that for a moment. And oh yeah, please meme the fuck out of Odyssey if you feel like it. So and how this happened last week already. It was last week, yes. So we did a panel in Davos, and you see me listening here to the CEO of Digital Asset, and yes, I was listening. So, and then Ed. I mean, not someone who just visits the hackathon or whatever. It's one of our partners, right? So bring in all big energy companies. He thought, okay, I'm going to meme the fuck out of Rutger, okay? And then this came out. It was after he knew that we're going to launch a piece of software for the hackathon called Cherry Twist, but that's a name on the background really, that allows you to find the right people for the right request of help you have. So you request for help to a certain person, and he or she will actually show up at your table, whether you are a team or a challenge lead partner or stakeholder, whoever. So anyway, so that's how that kind of started. And when we look at what we are all doing, creating collaborative networks, building communities, really growing the internet basically as well, right? A lot of the stuff that is being built in Odyssey is part of, could be part of the internet. Okay, if you keep it into a separate enterprise environment, it's still a little bit closed, but if you make it public, and digital public infrastructure is part of the internet. And of course, the internet is growing its own culture. And there was someone who saw it coming quite early as something quite profound. So yeah, let's hear it. Oh, wait. Oh, you're going to click it, right? No.
But what is it specifically about the internet? I mean, anybody can say anything, and it all adds up to what? I mean, it seems to me there's nothing cohesive about it in the way that there was something cohesive about the youth revolution in music.
Oh, but absolutely. And because I think that we, at the time, up until at least the mid-70s, really felt that we were still living under the, in the guise of a single and absolute created society where there were known truths and known lies, and there was no kind of duplicity or pluralism about the things that we believed in. That started to break down rapidly in the 70s, and the idea of a duality in the way that we live. There are always 2, 3, 4, 5 sides to every question. That the singularity disappeared, and that, I believe, has produced such a medium as the internet, which absolutely establishes and shows us that we are living in total fragmentation.
You don't think that some of the claims being made for it are hugely exaggerated? I mean, when the telephone was invented, people made amazing claims.
I know the
NDs,
president,
for example.
The president at the time when it was first invented, he was outrageous. He said he foresaw the day in the future when every town in America would have a telephone. Now how dare he claim like that? Absolute bullshit. No, you see, I don't agree. I think the internet, I don't think we've even seen the tip of the iceberg. I think the potential of what the internet is going to do to society, both good and bad, is unimaginable. I think we're actually on the cusp of something exhilarating and terrifying.
It's just a tool, though, isn't it?
No, it's not. No. No, it's an alien life form.
What do you think, I mean, when you think then about the
Is
future
there life
of it,
on Mars? Yes, it's just landed here.
but it's simply a different delivery system there. You're arguing about something more profound.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about the actual context, and the state of content is going to be so different to anything that we can really envisage at the moment, where the interplay between the user and the provider will be so in simpatico. It's going to crush our ideas of what mediums are all about. But it's happening in every form. It's happening in visual art. The breakthroughs at the early part of the century with people like Duchamp, who were so prescient in what they were doing and putting down. The idea that the piece of work is not finished until the audience come to it and add their own interpretation, and what the piece of art is about is the grey space in the middle. That grey space in the middle is what the 21st century is going to be about.
Sorry? Yeah, 99, 2000. Yeah, but there's one video that says 99 and there's other video says 2000. But it's timeless, basically, I would say. When we are looking at mediums, right? Any prototype created at the hackathon is a medium, right? So that's something to consider. And we will dive into that a little bit more. I was already mentioning a pulse of the ecosystem. And this could be literally observed when you look at Twitter. We know this already for a long time. Can you hit the play button on this one? So what they have done is look at the amount of tweets. Yep. And whether it's positive or negative in connotation, right? And I bet you can do the same for any country. Yeah. Yeah, and they are too. Well, it's the US. It gets greener too again. At some point. Or not at all. Yeah. And now they all go to sleep and it's nice and quiet again. So yeah, that's just. Ben ik te snel gegaan? I can't go back. So, Dimi, can you take us to the goals of what we're trying to do with this session?
I can try. Hi, everyone. As Rutger already hinted at, community is built around the culture. That culture, I think, is a narrative that you can expose to the hackathon, because you're in a challenge and you're saying that, well, we want to make a difference in the world. So this means that you want to have a narrative that actually explains very well what the difference is. When we're talking about digital communities, we're talking about people converging around a topic, a new narrative, a new kind of symbolism in life that makes them drive. We can also say that in Odyssey, this is happening in the meat space, in the physical space, because we're all sitting there, we buy into a challenge, and then we think our solution should create a new narrative to explain what the challenge is about and what the potential solution path is. What we are looking at is how can you condense that message, that ideology, into a very simple form, and I think memes and memetic engineering are very close to that. We might know memes from these funny pictures, but we go way deeper than that. They're really a unit of culture. They're a unit of zeitgeist. So what we're trying to do with this is make sure that you actually understand the narrative that you want to explain during that 3 days of buying into the challenge. That you see the future and you can explain it very well and condense to the audience. So that should be your genesis, right? Knowing what the challenge is about, knowing which narrative you actually want to tell to the world. And the good thing about this is that everybody here wants to create digital heroes in their system. Who's gonna win the future? And then there should be a pun, but I didn't prepare any pun. So we can just skip to the next slide, I think.
Yeah, so think of your prototype not just as a piece of tech prototype, piece of code. You're also prototyping a culture, which what do you put in there? Knowing also that culture is completely emergent and chaotic, right? But still, you can give it all kinds of interesting nudges. Yeah, Elvis of course said the world is a stage and needs to be played. And when you look at a meme is a stage. Your prototype is a meme. Your prototype is a cultural manifestation, because you will make all kinds of choices based on what you believe in, what you don't want to happen in the future, what you're dreaming about, what you like, what you hate, or what it's a combination of all that stuff, right? So then, if the teams are the bands and Odyssey is the festival, so these are the analogies that, I mean, it's not 100% that you should see it like that, but that's how you could play with it. And then the question is, who do you invite on your stage? Right? Because if you can put others on your stage, then you can turn them into heroes, right? So, anyone ever been on chat roulette? Yeah, okay, honest people there. Talking about putting people on stage. Can you play the video?
Are you sad? We've come to cheer you up. Don't be sad. Don't be sad. 2,000 people here in Charlotte are here to cheer you up. Hello, Mr. Shirtless Man. How are you doing today? Is it hot in there? paper. What does it say? Is there really a person in there? Show your face if there is. Show your face if there is. Alright, I can't read sideways. I gotta play minor chords. Gonna read sideways. If you turn your head, I win. Ah, you win. You win. Can you write your name for us? We want to sing a song for you. You want a song? If you write your fucking name. Oh, Bobby. Bobby likes to play him some games he can win. I hope you win more than an asshole playing piano and 2,000 people in Charlotte. Bobby, 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 you win. Okay, one more and then that's it. I'm sitting around playing the piano. How you doing there? You're looking so laid back. You got a knee, it's bigger than the rest of you. Is it a knee? I think it's a knee. Could it be your dick? You know, we were really having a good, whoa! Hey man, sitting on the toilet, sitting on the toilet, can't, hey bam, you're sitting on the toilet with your toilet roll. I looked up and you were there.
So yeah, could chat roulette be the space in the gray space? Bowie was mentioned.
Yeah, definitely connects people that don't want to be connected to each other, right? So I think a lot of the things I've seen is that it does lead to tending to create tribalism and maybe separation as well, culture. What we try to promote is unite the clans, look beyond your challenge, multiple challenge. And memes are a simple way to create a form of identity of unification. Maybe you want to say something about this, I can do as well. We're all about standardization, but that's also kind of like conformism. The internet was meant to be a canvas where everybody could draw their own impressions in any kind of format they like, whether you can interpret it or not. That's kind of fading away. It's also, there's a few interesting things happening when big providers are, well, trying to reformat your website into a new format that they can read better and then have discovery around that. So a lot of that free form is ending up into the marginal side of the internet, which I think is a shame. It does, yeah, there seems to be a video here.
Yes, of course.
So I mean, who here had a website on GeoCities?
I had.
Okay, not.
Who used the marquee tag?
So I mean, yeah, we used to have this kind of websites, you know. So imagine we all that we are creating on internet is squeezed into this narrow format produced by Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, etc., etc. You have to follow their format. And of course, within that format, people get creative and memes grow, right? But the internet was really personal place. Everybody said like, welcome to my website first. That was the first thing people would say on the internet, right? All the moving GIFs, they are transparent for a reason, so that you can put it anywhere on top of everything, and that everyone can reuse it and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's the early internet culture where we can really learn a lot about, yeah, the mix and mashup culture that really comes through the concrete as sprouts, so to say. Oh, for the people who were at the hackathon, you saw the cat walking there. So yeah, Dimi.
Let's dive in a bit more into, like, I guess, technicalities or understanding what that unit of culture, which we call a meme, is. As said before, it's more like a carrier of a zeitgeist. It's kind of your differential in culture. And according to some theories where it got first like introduced, I guess that was a selfish gene of Richard Dawkins. Now, you don't have to read everything of what he put out there, because I don't think most of it is not super correct, but he did coin the term meme as being a unit of culture that can evolve and take place in a body, a mind of a human. There's also a term called dank, and that's kind of like reducing the quality of a meme to show that it's like widespread and everybody kind of compress it more and more. And so it's just, yeah, a thing people tend to do. But if you really think about memetics, it's a very interesting study of how information propagates through people. And you could kind of make an analogy with Darwinian evolution or survival of the fittest. You could say that the human mind is kind of the host of ideas, and you cannot have every idea conquering your mind, right? Some of them die out, some of them survive, some of them mate with other ideas, you create new ideas, some of them mutate by themselves. And the replication factor has a lot of interesting analogies with virology, but you have to look at this in different time scales. For example, if we as humans replicate, our DNA gets halved every generation, right? So in 10 generations, it's a logarithmic scale, so it's not much left of us in 10 generations. But a meme, like Jesus could be a meme, or believing in a God could be a meme, that survives way longer, maybe millennia, maybe outpaces your DNA. Replication of memes is also different than replication of genes. For example, you could celibacy, again, kind of like a religious thing. It's also kind of a meme because it would be like suggested to young guys that didn't really know where their life would go and say, hey, you can become a pastor, celibacy. Now, from a genetic point of view, that's very bad. You would die out because you don't replicate. But the idea of celibacy lives forward. And then you can come into the idea of the fitness of a meme. Like it's kind of like the adaptivity of the human brain and the openness to new ideas, how you can take criticism and transforming your brain, those existing paradigms into new paradigms. I guess if you find a good way to express that, that has way better capacity to survive in the brain and in the zeitgeist of humans. So it's really about survival in the brain, survival through a community and a culture. Now, there are some interesting ways to start playing around in promoting ideas like memes. And what I found on the internet, and that has kind of, do you know this Reddit thread called Meme Economy? It's super interesting because there people actually creating an economy around memes. And what the economy entails is that you want to be an early curator, early fisher of memes. If you see something popping up that you think that might be popular in the future, you can bet on it And then if more people, a lot of people follow your bet afterwards and say, yeah, I'm going to upvote this or I'm going to invest in this meme as well, then your share in that meme becomes more valuable, which is things we see in crypto economic primitives like bonding curves and curation markets, which is a whole thread by itself. But it shows that about opinion, there is kind of an incentive for people to promote things that they think will be popular in the future. And smart contracts and tokens can definitely help there. So there is like a separate site here that shows who's the meme lord, right? This is a community of 1.2 million people, and this guy basically predicted which memes will become popular the easiest. And they're even like showing off templates, so they take a few images and they empty some space, and basically they prepare it for reusage and mutation. So meme markets, like this meme economy could actually live on smart contracts as well, right? And it's all about how to incentivize opinion and curation. Like, how well can you predict that something is going to be popular in the future?
I think what was kind of cool about this is that in DAO Stack, if you weren't there, the video will be online later, people can actually predict what kind of plans within the DAO get actually approved through the consensus mechanism of the group. So you can either vote with your tokens, or you can basically predict if it's going to survive or not. So all these kind of mechanisms, they are more or less the same.
I think this also kind of shows a very crucial and profound thing about tokenization. It's basically creating scarcity about real world things. You're creating scarcity about your opinion. So you can't just say that, hey, I'm going to bot bomb this entire network with promoting my ads. No, you have to earn your tokens in the system, and then you can spend them to invest in new things. So basically your personal opinion, which is something very physical, gets tokenized and gets kind of like earned into the system. It's very hard to invent new opinion tokens out of nothing because you have to earn them in the system. So I think that's kind of very profound if we're thinking about what blockchain and tokenization does. Well, it creates an internet of value. What is value? It's agreements, trust, but it's also opinion. It's everything that we as humans think is kind of scarce. Other memes just manifest themselves as a manifesto. For example, the Cypherpunks manifesto, the Declaration of Independence. People buy into this. They create open communities. They start hacking away on this on their free time. They sometimes quit their job, stay up late at night. They get passionate about it. It's a culture that evolves, and it also creates new tools. People engage. They spend something the most valuable they have, their time and their brain space, into this type of manifestos. So if you can prepare for your track some form of manifesto, or think about what would the manifesto be, I think you're already thinking ahead. In crypto, memification and tribalism is utmost apparent. Like Satoshi Nakamoto, what a fantastic meme it is, right? Who is it? Is it a group of 5 people, a few of them died, the multisig is out, or is it just Craig Wright? Is he still, anyone following this saga? So he forked Bitcoin into Bitcoin Satoshi's vision. So buying into like the vision and the culture of Satoshi, of course he's a big fraud, and don't mention the C word. But then one of the first times I was entering crypto, which was about 2012, I went to room 77 in Berlin, which was one of the early Bitcoin cafes, and people were like throwing Doge coins to each other. They made it rain. The entire cafe, everybody was sitting there on their phones, and they were like spending Doge coins to each other, and it rained on other people's devices. So this was kind of like a hype, a super inflationary currency. It was so many printed. And this Doge itself, I forgot the name of the dog. Who knows the actual breed? All right. So look, together we solved the puzzle. But yeah, that fantastic meme, right? Also create like an entire lexicon and words around it. And then you also have Pepe coin. And you know Pepe the Frog, there is kind of like a toxic side to things because it's been affiliated with, I guess, rape or things that are less accepted in our social structure and our community. And memes can turn into two sides, right? There's these things that not only Pepe is doing, but you have like these non-playable characters, NPCs, which also turn into memes, and they're also promoting hate and hate speech, and people also converge around that. So there's two sides to this coin. And I think if we then look at something that is called Moloch DAO, it's trying to correct behavior, or it's not trying to correct behavior, it's trying to find unity amongst what you think is the right thing. Anyone knows what Moloch DAO is? Only a few. So this is one of the more popular Ethereum-based DAOs. Moloch is kind of a story, it's an ancient story about, the question here is that if everybody wants to change the system, then who's driving the system? Moloch is driving the system. It's kind of a god of inertia. Just keep it going. People try to disturb the system, but it won't work because there is this inertia of culture that keeps it away. Now, the DAO that's made beyond here is where you say, well, if you don't like it, you can rage quit. You rage quit by taking out your funds. You lose all the power that you earned in the system, and you get out and you get your earnings, you get your liquidity back. So it's two things. Like, if you have votes in the system, then you can ask to mint new tokens, and you can spend them to invite others into this DAO, into this cult. And if you yourself think like, I don't like what's going on here, you fork off. And one of the guys doing that is called Meta Cartel, which is a fork of this, and then you see how this delta of culture is appearing, right? So some people didn't really buy into this, they forked off, they create their own DAO, and they have their own manifesto, and this can go on and on into perpetuity, and nobody knows what to follow anymore. So digital cultures, yeah, they replicate quickly.
Just to imagine, I mean, if someone would fork off, let's say, a company like Shell or Vattenfall, if it would be a fork, and then based on different principles or just a part of the company where you would say, okay, well, we're going to listen to Audrey Tang in a bit, and they are literally forking regulations. And then what kind of culture or manifesto would that bring, right? So in that terms, whatever you split off or trying to change, it brings a new manifesto, whether you write it or not, it emerges anyway, right?
Another interesting fork is called Liberland. Do you know what Liberland is? Yeah. You want to say something? Yeah, so this is kind of like a self-proclaimed self-sovereign state, which is in between the border of Serbia and Croatia. It's only 7 square millimeters demilitarized zone, so not really claimed to one of both countries. And then somebody said, hey, I'm going to fork from nationality and create my own state with, of course, a cryptocurrency. Whether that actually works or ever gets recognized, at least the effort is there. And maybe for the challenge owners, the question is, how would I fork my enterprise? How could I shift culture by just promoting a simple idea and having people work around that? So forking behavior is actually super important to basically steer the meme and the culture into a direction you're really interested in. So what I did earlier when I was at Ocean Protocol, one of the first things I created a little description to attach into the Genesis block. And that was Ocean Protocol. What is it? Well, for me at that point in time it was, and this was together with a few others, developers, a decentralized data economy for the common goods. And we had a few design goals attached to it. One of them was anti-fragility. You want to create a resilient system that cannot be like overpowered by a few big players. Decentralize the errors. And for me, this is the key of decentralization. It's not consolidating power. It's more making sure that a single error cannot have a gigantic blast radius inside of your network and collapse. And what an error is to be defined by the culture in the system. I think Ethereum Classic, it's what's the fork, right? Also, Animal Farm of George Orwell, a few other things, and the idea is to embed these values inside of your Genesis block, and then basically people forking off, they also could fork from the ideology that you're promoting. Now, back to Rutger here.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, again, when we talk about prototyping, of course, the best prototypes happen after all the human processes of connecting with the stakeholders, the change leads, users, unlearning or getting rid of all the ideas that you had that you think were correct that were apparently not correct because the stakeholders or users said otherwise. And if you are able to align that and then prototype the essence, etc., then of course you can include all of that into the dynamics of the prototype, right? So then we can start developing a pulse, because your prototype is the narrative. It creates the narrative. It's a medium, right? Because what the prototype does includes how everyone recognizes him or herself in the particular problem that you are solving. And whether people get excited or mad or whatever. It's like art. You can be mad at a piece of art, right? Because you just don't agree with it. Well, you can be mad at the prototype because you don't think it will work in your reality. The story is on how the world will change if 10 million people would use it, or even 100 million people would use it, right? And so that determines the tune of the success. It's not just enough to bring all the instruments on stage, but you got to think of the tune you're playing. So just questions to take with you is, if you're building a stage, what is the role your stakeholders get? Are you the band that is going to take all the stage presence, or will you? In how big is that stage? Right? How many people could be on it? Well, could be infinitely amount of people, right? And what's then the song everyone is able to? Can you join in your band? Can I become a band member as a stranger? What role can I play? And that says something about adoption. That says something about how people want to co-fund something because they care. They are emotionally attached, right? Or they find that they can play an important role in that, where they are part of the problem or want to be part of the solution. And that and after that becomes the impact, because after adoption you can make an impact.
In some of the other hackathons that I've been, you could see that, well, there's also tracks and groups around a specific track, but then sometimes it happens that somebody has such a cool idea that people start abandoning the track and they just go berserk on this new idea, which totally will fail in the judging criteria, but they just loved working on that. And then the girly testnet happened that way, and a few of the sharding stuff also happened that way. So I guess that for me personally would be success if I could create a bit of chaos in the Odyssey hackathon. So
it's also, I mean, this stuff is, I mean, for me it's not easy. They always say when you do enterprise IT projects, they always say, yeah, the technical implementation is easy. Well, it's not, but it's easy. And then you have the cultural implementation or the organizational implementation, and it's really about digital transformation is really about culture. But what do we do then, right? So this is our exploration into that. So therefore, I would also love to hear all your feedback about this stuff and what sticks, or what kind of questions do you get from this pretty fake stuff called culture, because we're trying to understand basically ourselves and what is going on in the program. from a human perspective.
So we tried to meme the tracks already a little bit, a few tracks. One of them is the ocean diversity and upcycle. This one is really sad, actually, this one. Dory's dead. No one will ever find Dory because Dory is probably dead. That's not, well, we also tried it with buildings with personality. I really like that track. I think we can do a lot with this track. Like, this is where arts kick in, and autonomous and self-owned buildings, and they steer away from humans, and they create their own little world. So I'm eyeballing that track. Another thing that, and this is just an idea, maybe I find some people that want to help with this. The memer, the beamer that will meme, or the meme that will beam. So, you know, yeah, I know. It's getting complex, but the idea is we have one beamer. Somewhere there's a lot of beamers at the Odyssey Hackathon, but one of them is solely dedicated to beaming memes, and how to get your meme, because this is scarcity, right? There's only one channel, one content channel here, and you want to basically hijack the channel. You want your meme, your culture to get on there. How do you get it on there? You need to get buy-in of others, right? So you're going to propose your meme with a URL to a smart contract, and then we play a little crypto game or something else. I have a few here that I want to explore, but the more people buy into your meme, the more chance you have for your meme to hijack the communication channel, right? So you could basically create like kind of a curation economy around this. I think that would be fun. And at least that gives you a bit of like an idea of what ideas stick and people are trying to spend on. Let's see. What have we left?
Yes.
Oh. No. Yeah, so I think we will add a bit of like mimetic engineering to the Odyssey track. It will be like your point of genesis. I don't know how the current, how you call it, like this dashboard that you have to fill in.
The canvas.
The canvas, right? So we will have one little spot reserved for the meme.
Bij deze, I think
Yes.
we do. Yeah.
Look
Good
at
one.
that.
Good
Everybody in favor?
one. Yep.
Hey, well, close enough.
Right.
All right. Yeah. Let's. Are there any questions or like remarks?
Thank you. Interesting talk. My question is, it's sort of a bit of a philosophical question, I guess, but there is some debate about whether memes can be engineered or not. Like if you're forcing a certain stream by trying to meme a certain idea, what's your take on that? Do you think that you can do that? I mean, it seems with mimetic engineering that's the idea.
You have the known knowns, the known unknowns, the unknown knowns, and the unknown unknowns, right? So now we're creating a stochastic, chaotic system with all these type of inputs. I think if you really want to do mimetic engineering, you have to go and find what are the known unknowns. So you want to create something that's novel enough so you haven't seen it before, so that's already a big problem. Like first you have to know what exists, and then you want to create a counter movement. But you have to put in some brain power. I don't think you can automate these things. So try to be, it's hard to be anti-something if you don't know what the something is, right? And it's not always the case that the anti part wins. Maybe it's just an increment or a concise message that you bring out. And always, you probably could already find it on Google, whatever you had in your mind. So. But yeah, there's definitely something to say about what's popular and how to embed our popularity inside of a meme so you can hit the mainstream. But that's not really what I find a meme. That's just like suiting the mainstream with more content. A real meme for me is a unit of unique culture difference. And that's hard to engineer.
There's room for one more question before we have to go back to the main hall for the closing remarks.
Thank you for a great presentation. I really like the analogy with the culture and the band and the memes. I also think that looking at it in terms of culture helps us think about how we should bring the use case for our solutions more to the front, and not after the technology was started, but thinking about use cases and stakeholders and their interests and needs and the context in which you want to deploy it. It makes me think the band on the stage, the best bands also have really virtuose soloists in the band. But if you have too long solos, then people won't like you anymore, but you do need some solos. So you need to think, how do you appreciate the roles of your team members, and how much room do you leave for the solos? Would you have an idea about that?
I think that's a really good question. Yeah. Oh, I got shut off.
No. You can still answer that question. No problem there.
Well, since you brought in the band, I'll give it to you. But I think charisma is definitely something that is being used into promoting ideas by an individual that's really charismatic.
Yeah, this is basically where creativity kicks in. There are many artists who really integrate the observer into the observer is needed for the art to be there, even, right? What's this guy, Olafur? Anyone knows Olafur? Yes. Danish. He has a studio in Berlin. Really cool series, Abstract on Netflix. He does it a lot. But also, maybe you've seen, and that's already, I mean, that's
keep it short,
way
keep it
back.
Short, please.
Yeah. It's way back. But Freddie Mercury turned the whole stadium upside down. He involved the whole public, and they were very easy to integrate for him. So that was interaction back then. But if you project what you could do in the future, then you also can look at, for example, what Kutiman does from Israel. He basically takes hundreds of YouTube movies and mashes them in something new. So he creates a new stage. It's a meme, it's a video, and hundreds of people are in there, and it's a completely new music piece.
We now have to go
yes,
to
okay,
the...
so thanks for the question.
Thank you very much, Rutger. Thank you very much, Dimitri.